Hang in
do
there. It
that.
is Smylie Kaufman for 61. Wow.
I'm Smylie Kaufman, and this is The Smylie Show. All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of The Smylie Show. Super thrilled about this guest that we have here today, Jason Day. Jason, man, thank you for taking the time. We see the M, we see the Malbon. I didn't know where I was going to get started in this interview, but you've kind of just taken the fashion world by storm this year. You know, when I think of you, Jason, I think of just the tight shirts, and this year you've just, done your thing, man. It's fun to see what you've been putting on every week.
Well, I appreciate you having me on the show, man. This is the first time for me, so I'm excited to have this conversation with you guys today. And then, it's been kind of interesting to say the least this year. It's just doesn't take much to kind of shake the tree a little bit in the golfing world, especially with what you wear, which is amazing. And I think, obviously, like you said, I used to wear a lot of tight stuff, back in the day, where there used to be, with Adidas or Nike, I was wearing like very athletic performance type of clothing. And now the clothing's just a little bit baggy, which is funny. And I was actually talking to the guys, I'm trying to get my shirts baggier next year.
Oh, let's go.
Yeah, kind of like not to the point of, Tiger 2000, but very close to it.
Man, that's going to set the fashion world on fire. I'm excited for that look. I mean, when I was in college watching you light the professional world on fire with golf. I mean, I'm just this, green bean asparagus looking 6 foot guy at 145 pounds, and Jason Day's winning golf tournaments in these tight shirts. And I'm like, man, I got to get, start wearing my schmediums and start doing some curls. But now I think you're trying to set us kind of like how football, they go to the air raid to running it. They go back and forth. I think you're trying to set us into a new era, back to the old era, I should say, which is the baggy stuff, which I'm for.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's like more, I think I just had over the years, I got more tired of like wearing kind of the same thing over and over again. So I kind of wanted to be a little bit different. Every now and then you wear something on the tee box, and you walk onto the first tee, and then you look across the tee box and someone's wearing the same thing as you. You know what I mean? So it's nice to be able to kind of go out there and know that, like, hey, I'm wearing something a little bit different to most guys, which is like ultimately turns out to be pretty dramatic in the end. But it is interesting. It's been fun because what I've kind of done is I've gone to the point of like, hey, let's kind of push the boundaries a little bit, and then I'll bring it back the next week or the next day with like tighter fitting golf stuff. So hasn't been dramatic difference of like, hey, let's just go all baggy, all like kind of streetwear. There's been some streetwear stuff. There's also been some traditional golf stuff. There's been everything in between. So it's kind of nice to be able to shock it up a little bit that way.
No, you definitely have, man, and it's been fun to watch. And Jason, I've always been a fan of yours. I think your hard work, your resilience, inspired me kind of when I was coming up in college, because that's kind of right around the time you were making a name for yourself on major championships, and just doing some research for this interview. I thought Dylan DeChere did a fantastic piece with you on his breakthrough with golf.com. And it really just kind of set the stage for me at the beginning of this interview of kind of just profiling your come up a little bit and how you ended up getting to a boarding school. Can you just talk a little bit about that? Because I think it kind of sets the stage of why Jason Day is one of the most resilient, hardworking professional golfers that we've seen the last couple decades.
Yeah. So I'll like, my story is like kind of large, but I'll try and condense it as much.
Yeah, no, please.
I grew up in rural Australia. Like I was kind of grew up on a farm when I was a kid, and then my dad found a golf club at a rubbish tip. So we used to go to the rubbish tip, or landfill is what we call it over here, and try and find things that we could use around the house, because we weren't well off. We weren't like crazy poor, but we weren't well off. So we'd go and try and find stuff that we could use around the house. My dad found a golf club, and then he brought it back. And then that's kind of how I, started my journey in golf. And we moved away from where I was in Beaudesert, Queensland, to a place called Rockhampton, which is 8 hours north of where I'm at.
Wow.
In Beaudesert, which was quite a significant change. And then my mum and dad were meat workers. And the story kind of gets like, it's like this. So when I started playing junior golf, my dad was very, very abusive on the golf course. So if I didn't perform, he'd beat me. So I remember one thing when I didn't perform and play well at a junior event at my home club, he in the car after the round, he completely beat me. I was bruised all over my body. But what I understood was that if there was ever a positive out of it like that, was that it forced me to concentrate at a very young age, forced me to focus at a very young age. Because I absolutely love golf. Golf was just something that I just thoroughly enjoyed so much, even if I weren't playing with my friends, at 8 years old. But my dad was very scary. If I didn't perform, I knew that I needed to perform, so I needed to go out there and focus. So I wasn't always joking around with my friends. And then my dad passed away when I was 12 of cancer. And long story short, you look back in life and you go, man, one of those, why did some of these things happen? But then you don't realize some of these things happened for a reason, and there was a lot of good that came out of it. So, not saying that my father passing was a good thing. It was just, it opened up another door, another avenue for me to be able to go to boarding school. And I started falling off the rails a little bit. I started drinking at 12 and a half, after my dad passed away, getting in fights at school and just going down the wrong kind of path. And my sister ran away from home for 4 years. She was 14 years old, so she was homeless on the streets. I had some other personal issues inside my family that was pretty dark stuff, that I won't talk about. But that's kind of when my mum took a chance on me. She borrowed some money. She sent me away to a boarding school back actually really close to where I was born, Beaudesert. It was actually only 20 minutes away, which is funny enough. And this boarding school, that's when I met Colin Swatton, who used to be my, coach / caddy for a long, long time. And that was the positive that came out of it, was that I got to meet Colin. And
right.
I think he knew early that I needed structure in my life. There was nothing else to do other than because we were in the middle of nowhere in this golf academy. It was literally golf and nothing else. So he knew that I needed structure. So he gave me a structure in my life. And that's kind of, I started to play a lot better since then. That's kind of, in a really condensed story, that's, how things progressed to the golf academy.
Well, I want to just talk about the golf academy because you just mentioned some obvious trauma that you dealt with as a kid, with family problems, but also your father passing away. But then there's a love of the game that you found during all of this time in which, going to this academy and being around other players and a very good coach in Colin Swatton. When, Jason, at this academy, did you find yourself believing in yourself and realizing, the potential that you did have? Yeah.
So it's funny enough, I talk about this academy that I went to was called Coralbin, and Adam Scott went there, Stephen Bowditch went there, Andrew.
Oh, really?
Yeah, a bunch of
okay.
Yeah, so a bunch of these guys that have been tour proven went to this golf academy. There was a boatload of other players that went there that, either had Asian tour status, European tour status, or PGA Tour status. So it's after a year of going there, that closed down, and we moved 40 minutes down the road to another golf academy called Hills, which was 20 minutes on the other side of Beaudesert. And that's, after, I think it was when I was around 15. Yeah, actually it was 15 because I went and played the Queensland Amateur, and I was the youngest winner in 104 years to win the Queensland Amateur. Wow.
right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I am ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long, people.
What in the world is going on in Miami, Dom?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take, hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take New Orleans.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
I do a sliding DiVincenzo to the what? Obviously, Terrence Shannon Jr., that is actually dynamic offensively and defensively. So we'll see how it works. I think it's a little bit of a work in progress. Do both teams win? Yes. I don't think at the end of the day, Minnesota could have afforded to keep Cat, Rudy, and Ant with that amount of money.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
I do think they come back, and I think they win this game, but they've got to do it decisively. I think they've got to get that confidence back because they went out there, and like I said earlier, Kentucky almost beat Georgia. Kentucky almost did beat Ole Miss, and I think what you're going to see in this conference, if you don't play well and you're a top 10 team in the SEC, you're going to get knocked out by one of those top 25 teams in the SEC if you're not ready to play.
Powered by SportsGrid.
I mean, you obviously matured a ton in your game at that time period.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing that set me apart from a lot of my competition was that because I went to this golf academy, I was able to get out and practice more than everyone else. I remember it was like more of a pride thing for me that I got up to 32 and a half hours of practice a week, including school. You know what I mean? So it was just like something that I thrived on, and I just knew because I had everything written down. I knew exactly because we don't have daylight saving in Australia, in Brisbane, well, Queensland. So the day started very early. I remember I'd get up around 4:30, and I'd go practice for 3 hours, 3.5 hours before school.
Was anybody else doing that, or was it just you?
So my caddy Luke, who you know, we used to be roommates. He did it, and his excuse of stopping was that he goes, "You started improving, and I never improved." So he goes, "I just stopped working." So, but like he was a guy that actually gave me the book about Tiger Woods, and I read the book, and I'm like, well, Tiger's shooting at 13 years old, 14 years old. Tiger's shooting 68s, 66s, 65s, and why am I shooting 72s, 70s, and every now and then I sprinkle a 69 in there. So that's from that early age. I don't know what happened and why it happened, but my mindset just all of a sudden said, okay, how do I improve and how do I get better? And it's like my first thing was short game. I need to save shots around the greens. I need to be better putter. And then it kind of just expanded from there. And then obviously now I'm kind of known for my short game and my putting.
Yeah, absolutely. You're one of my favorite putters in the world. And during this time, the one question I want to ask about, being a part of this academy. So the Golf Australian National Squad, how do you get on that? As soon as you get to the academy, is that when they're like, you know what, we want Jason Day to be a part of it? Because that seems like to me that was a huge avenue for you to be able to expand and play against some of the best competition amateur golf had.
So, yeah, and it's very important because I didn't realize how thankful I am now to have certain individuals in Queensland and also Australia to be able to not only give us the funding to be able to go to certain places and play, especially overseas, and you just take that for granted. So I'm very thankful to those people. But so essentially what happens is that typically, if you're a good player, you get invited to state squads. And when you get involved, because we don't, it's not like America. Australia's very big, but we don't have many states like we do over, in Australia that we do have in America. So you're looking at the states that have the best juniors in them. And once you start to join these junior squads in these states, Then from there, you go away and you play this thing called the Interstate Series. So it's the best juniors from each state and territory that play against each other. And then from that, they typically pick the Australian squad from that. And then, yeah, gotcha. So that's kind of how it happens. And then you typically play in the Australian junior squad, and if you're really good and you start to play good in amateur events, then you get picked for the men's squad. So I remember representing Australia as the Australian men's squad as like a 16-year-old kid, and yeah, I mean that was kind of it. Like I came over and played the Spirit International for Australia, which is, I don't know if you've ever played in that one. Yeah, so I played that. There was a couple other things, and we were in the Australian squad, and we went and played the South African Amateur. I was super young, but like we would get invited. I remember some of the guys would tell me these stories from way back in the day, and back then I'd be in the state squads, so it was the Queensland state squad, and we'd play this tournament called Lake Macquarie, and so back then everyone's young and they're 18 to 20-year-olds, and then after the tournament they're looking to go out to the bars and have fun and
of course.
And they walk
say no more.
They walk into my room and I'm doing push-ups in my room, and they're like, "Jay, you gonna come?" And I'm like, "No." And they're like, "Why not?" I said, "I'm gonna get to number 1 in the world." And I was just doing push-ups in my room after the tournament. And I totally forgot about that story until one of the guys just, this past year told me about it. And I'm like, dang, I don't even remember that story, but it's kind of epic story now that like I'm in there doing push-ups as like a 17-year-old kid saying I'm going to get to number 1 in the world. And then all of a sudden I get to number 1 in the world.
Yeah, I mean, becoming number 1 in the world just doesn't happen overnight. And you just described how, putting the amount of hours that you did, 30 plus hours in a week, is just insane. And it kind of makes me think too, at, 15, 16 years old, when you're doing this, you've basically skipped an entire process in which, for me, like at 8, I started that process at like 18, 19, 20 in college. Yeah. So you basically had your college experience where you realize how hard you have to work early. And I imagine, Jason, is that why at that point you realize, you know what, like I don't need to go to college. I've already kind of had my emotional maturity. I know how to do my laundry. I know how to keep up with myself. I mean, you've kind of just skipped a whole process.
Yeah, you're 100% spot on. And that's so true, because most kids that go to college, there's some sort of maturity level that they actually kind of need to go, hey, I've lived with my parents for 18 years. I need to get out and just kind of live by myself. And then from there, you kind of mature out and you kind of understand, okay, living life, by yourself, what you need to do, how you need to train, how you need to prepare, how you need to like travel, all that stuff. And I was doing that at 12 and a half, 13, and I did that for a long time. And you had to grow up fast at that age. You know what I mean? It was something that you had to do very quickly. So, and mind you, like everything was about golf too. So like everything was fast tracked, and I didn't have a normal life as a kid. Obviously going to a boarding school is not normal for a lot of kids. And I didn't have a normal childhood, but I'm very thankful for that because of what I built, and the foundation that I built going into my professional. And that, once again, that's why I never went to college, because I just felt like I didn't need to do that because I felt 4 years of college, and me and Cole would talk about it all the time. 4 years of college would only set me back because I wanted to turn professional and play against the potential competition that I'm going to be playing against on tour one day.
We're at a point in time coming off of a wild Saturday of college football. People are consistently peeking over at this board.
He actually would not be my number 1 overall pick, nor would I bet him to be the number 1 overall pick. I think you got that next wave of NFL players, which is so enticing, which when you see Jaden Daniels come into the NFL and you go, I can get something like that with a guy with just as good an arm.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
It's a new era in CFP to start off this year, put on full display.
My take on this game is simple. I know some people will be upset about it. Good riddance to the Pac-12.
Can you do it in terms of the week to week to week?
I don't see a pathway for this team to miss the college football playoffs.
We want to make sure you have those best bets in the entirety of our betting cards.
That was
Lincoln!
But he had that program was already going there!
Only on SportsGrid.
If you're sliding DiVincenzo to the what? Obviously, Terrence Shannon Jr., that is actually dynamic offensively and defensively. So we'll see how it works. I think it's a little bit of a work in progress. Do both teams win? Yes. I don't think at the end of the day, Minnesota could have afforded to keep Cat, Rudy, and Ant with that amount of money.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
I think the Washington Commanders are one of the best bets to win it all, or at the very least win the NFC.
Their offensive line, I do want to say one thing. It's very average. The coaching is good. They're getting good coaching from Bobby Johnson, their line coach. Here from the Giants, but they've kind of overachieved. Let's call it like it is. Daniels has taken them up. Look, that division's not very good, and they could very well win it over the Eagles, and the Cowboys. They're not a Super Bowl team.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
As you know, because you've been there before, when you actually do that and go through that for the first time, you're like, wait, kind of catches you off guard. And then
Yes.
Home and all that stuff too, yeah.
Yeah, you really got to develop a love for the game. And I see that you turned pro, Jason, in 2006. Yep. And I guess when you just kind of talk about Colin Swatton, I'm generally curious too about, when did Colin decide, you know what, I'm going to be with you every step of the way in this, because you guys had a 20-year partnership. And I'm just curious from, he could have easily just stayed back in Australia, but he went with you this entire time. Is that?
Yeah, exactly. So at the time, when I was thinking about turning professional, he actually went around and tried to search for caddies to try and say, hey, try out this guy and see what you like. And then I think we test trialed a couple of caddies in professional events, and I'm like, the chemistry wasn't there. And then when I turned professional, he said, hey, what would you think if I started to caddy for you? I'm like, great. And what I'm so thankful about Colin and what he did for me, and obviously he gave me structure when I was a kid, but we always were forward thinking. We always had a goal in mind. We always, I remember saying, we're talking about it, he's like, it almost it was his goal, but he kind of turned it into my goal. We're like, hey, we want to get to number 1 in the world by 22. I don't know why it was 22, but I think we ended up getting to number 5 in the world by 23, and obviously number 1 in the world by 27 or something like that. But it was always, hey, forward thinking, what do we need to do? What are the steps and what are the processes that we need to do to take to get to these goals? And having him on the bag, he was a very, very important part of my success in my career, just because of we always focused and we had that mindset of pushing forward.
So you earned your PGA Tour card in 2008, Jason, and we're going to kind of go, on this journey with you to where we are now in 2024, because I think from what I've observed from you, Jason, is that your swing, story of where you started with your golf swing to where you are now. I imagine there's been a swing video or two that's probably made it onto your phone in that period of time. So why don't we just start with, right at the beginning, you're a young, guy that's probably not dealing with injuries. Yeah. So was the golf swing for you always pretty natural? When did you start running into some back problems? What did you and Colin kind of work on at an early age and in the beginning of your professional career?
So we never really worked on a lot of things. And I used to have a few back problems when I was a junior. And then I also had a few back problems, when I started out professionally. And I moved from Orlando in 2008. So I lived in Orlando from 2006 to 2008. And I moved from Orlando to Texas to start working with the guy because I hurt my back. His name was Jeff Banaszak. He still works out on tour. He works with a lot of good players. And, from there, we never really worked on a lot of stuff. It was just, it was always like, the way that Cole worked was, hey, if you hit 10 balls, right, I'm just going to kind of make it really easy to understand. If you hit 10 balls every single day, you have a baseline. If you hit 15, that means you're getting better. If you hit 5, at some point, over time, only hitting 5 balls a day, it'll catch up and you won't have as many reps and you won't probably play as good. So that was my mindset always, that, all we did was we had a set practice plan where we know exactly how many balls we were hitting from tee to green, on the green, putting, all that stuff. I knew exactly how many hours that I was going to practice every day. And then we just hit draws and fades. When we were hitting full swing stuff, the only real things that we ever worked on was just getting it really short and compact.
Yeah.
Trying not to get the right hips to go too far lateral that way. And I think deep down, there was a lot of success there, but I think restricting the hips over time, and he never would say that we're trying to restrict the hips. I think I just naturally restricted the hips because it was, that's what I thought we needed to do to not get the hips to go laterally right, because essentially when I would get too lateral, then I'd get lateral this way. And
you lose your base.
You lose your base. And I think if I would have just turned in a better way, then we would have accomplished that goal, and I probably wouldn't have got as injured as much as I had. But I'm not saying that it was just all golf swing either, because I went through a phase of doing all sorts of, when I was in 2015 and 2016 when I was best, I was doing supersets of everything. I was
anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start, so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
I do think they come back, and I think they win this game, but they've got to do it decisively. I think they've got to get that confidence back, because they went out there, and like I said earlier, Kentucky almost beat Georgia. Kentucky almost did beat Ole Miss, and I think what you're going to see in this conference, if you don't play well and you're a top 10 team in the SEC, you're going to get knocked out by one of those top 25 teams in the SEC if you're not ready to play.
Powered by SportsGrid.
Yeah, it was a lifestyle. It was dedication to the lifestyle. But yeah, I mean, during that time, I never worked on technique. It was just like a couple of things, and then that was it. And we just did everything out there, pushing my awareness all the way out to the target. It was all target-oriented stuff. And then the injuries obviously came.
Right. Well, you're talking to a guy that restricted his hips, so like this is all. you're speaking
exactly
my.
What I'm talking about there.
Yeah, you're speaking my vocabulary because it would just cause me to have an open face, and I was just always kind of battling an open face. But everything you just described, Jason, just in your work ethic, how you'd have a plan, your the supersets, your nutrition. All this reminds me of is how you started this, which is, you wanted to get to number one in the world, all those push-ups you were doing instead of going out to the bar. And then that book that you mentioned of Tiger Woods, this reminds me of Tiger Woods, of how he would train.
Yeah.
Is that kind of how you saw yourself is if you're going to be the best, you got to train to be the best, similar to how Tiger did it?
You had to have, it was to get to the best. It's a lifestyle choice. Your whole life has to be in on that goal of being the best. You can't. It's very difficult. Some of the guys can do it, like a Dustin Johnson and some of these other guys. They can naturally just get to number one and just like, how do you do it so easily? You know how it is.
It's frustrating. Yeah, it's like
they don't practice as hard as like you or I. They're like kind of just naturally gifted in a way that they can do it, and it just doesn't look like it affects their lives that much. And then there's like people like me and like even Tiger, for instance, like one of his things was like, I'm not as like, I always laugh at this because I always say, hey, like what kept you at number one for so long? And he would look at me and go, I'm not as talented as you, so I had to work harder than you. I'm like, that is such a load of crap. He's way more talented than me, you know what I mean? But he did, once again, what he did great was that he matched great technique with unbelievable work ethic and also a great mental game. And when you have that three-prong effect, it's just gonna give success. So, yeah, I mean, getting back to being number one in the world, it was, what am I eating? How am I sleeping?
Right.
Is there any drama in my life that I need to get rid of? You know what I mean? Because the amount of stuff that happens personally at home affects you on the golf course. So you gotta understand that, like, having a toxic relationship or having drama off the golf course actually affects you on the golf course. Then you go, okay, how's my practice schedule? How's my gym work? And then you got to attack it from all different angles and go, okay, well, everything's working in order. Go out and play. And then if like my goal and I'm wanting to do it, I'm willing to push it, then you'll, at some point, if you have all those things working in order, you'll get there. Regardless, you can work your way to number one for sure.
Well, as somebody that's had a wife on tour playing professionally, it's not easy on the spouses. And you married your wife in 2009, Ellie. You have 5 kids now. So Jason, I mean, Ellie, being there for every step of the way for this and knowing that your priorities are to be the number one player in the world. Has it been difficult on you to manage, your relationship with your spouse, also being a good father to your kids and knowing kind of what you grew up in as in a bit of an abusive relationship with your dad that you mentioned at the beginning of this?
Yeah. I think that's why I got married young. I met Ellie when I was 17. We started dating when I was 19, and then I got married shortly thereafter, at 21 years old. And I just feel like some of the dysfunction that I had in my life as a kid, it was like wanting to have a family and a base around me. And that's like something that I always wanted. And I'm so blessed to have 5 healthy kids that are just honestly the best kids that I could ever ask for. But it is a lot of stress and a lot to ask of a wife when you're an athlete and you're trying to compete, especially in golf, because I think in other sports it's very there's certain time limits that, like, if you're playing a team sport, you can obviously practice outside of the teams, but most of the time it's like, hey, you're there with the team, you practice, and then you go home. For me, and as you know, because you're a professional golfer, the amount of time it is put into the game, and it's a lot. It's a lot. It can be a lot, and that can obviously have it can affect your significant other in different ways. Sometimes she wants me to be there, but she understands that I'm trying to accomplish like these goals of mine, whether that's getting to number one or getting back to number one, and sometimes she doesn't want to say things that are there's certain drama that's going on in my personal life, or like in her life, she kind of bites her tongue because she knows that it's going to affect me. So like I'm very, very blessed to have a wife in Ellie that she understands and supports me the way she does, because I don't think I would be able to do it with anyone else.
Yeah, well said. Well said. So this is actually funny that I'll bring this up, because I remember Dash when he was, just such. I mean, he was so small, and then your other is Lucy was your second. Is that right?
Yeah, it goes Dash, Lucy, Arrow, Oz, and Winnie.
So Lucy was, little Michelin girl at the PGA Championship. This was at Baltusrol. I'm staying at Ricky's house that week, and you had come over and listen, you're number one player in the world. You had 6 top 5s in majors. I mean, you were arguably the best player in the world. And I was thinking to myself, I was like, man, like 2 years ago, I was, at a bar at LSU. Like I just had such a fast rise on the PGA Tour that suddenly I was sitting next to the people that, that I had worked to try to, compete against one day. And so with that being said, just the parenting side is, now that I'm a father, for you, how have you been able to manage, being such a hard worker that you are and demanding excellence of yourself? And now Dash, who I saw him last week at the President's Cup, and this guy has sprouted up, and I can't believe how tall he is. How have you been able to be a parent and manage, those high expectations that you have, for your kids, but also not try to push them too hard?
Yeah, it's interesting with golf. With my life, I don't really have outside hobbies other than, there's 3 things in my life. There's 3 pillars in my life that are important: family, golf, and health. Mm-hmm. They're the only 3 things that fuel my life right now. Like I don't wish to go out and party. I don't wish to do anything else. I don't I've got my friends that I hang out with every now and then, but they're the 3 things that I need to focus and take care of. And the good thing about me is that I'm fortunate enough to have this facility in my backyard and be able to accomplish 2 things. Now, Dash, as you saw last week at the President's Cup, he's 12 and he's 5'11" at 12, which is he's a monster. He's going to be a lot taller than me, so he's crazy. Through having this facility at my house, I'm able to, have the kids out when I practice. And why this facility happened was I was practicing over at Muirfield Village, and I was thinking about my family. I'm like, well, I'm in the car 40 minutes a day going there and 40 minutes back. I'm like, well, if I can own the land next door to me, put a facility there, then I'll save, that time of driving. And
nobody bothers you either. Which is nice.
Well, nobody bothers you. You can get your work done. You'd be more efficient with it. But then, Dash, he comes out to practice with me now. Arrow, my 3rd, he comes out to practice. Even Oz, my 4th, he comes out to practice now. We were literally at a golf course called Big Walnut, which is this little country course, and I had the 3 boys, and we're out there playing. But yeah, it's just It is difficult to balance, personal life and professional life as well. And then obviously trying to not really push. I got pushed into the game. Do you know what I mean? Obviously my dad wanted me to play, and he pushed me into it. And I remember the feelings of getting pushed into it. And then all of a sudden I had this unbelievable passion for golf. And that's why I loved it. And that's why I stuck with it.
right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I'm ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all people.
What in the world is going on in Miami, Dom?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take, hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take New Orleans.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
I do think they come back, and I think they win this game, but they've got to do it decisively. I think they've got to get that confidence back because they went out there, and like I said earlier, Kentucky almost beat Georgia. Kentucky almost did beat Ole Miss, and I think what you're going to see in this conference, if you don't play well and you're a top 10 team in the SEC, you're going to get knocked out by one of those top 25 teams in the SEC if you're not ready to play.
Powered by SportsGrid.
He already has more than 1,000 yards. The last 3 running backs to win the Heisman, Derrick Henry, Mark Ingram, Reggie Bush, did not have more than 650 in their opening 5 games of the year. Ashton Genty on pace to strike the pose in December.
Statistics matter. Blow every record out of the water, and he will be a Heisman. Disgraceful performance by the head coach, not Gene.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
And I just want him to be able to find the passion for golf like I found the passion. And if he can do that, then he's got to be the one out here practicing by himself. And he'll do the little things and be out by himself grinding. Because, as you know, when you're practicing by yourself, it can be very, very lonely, and it's like very boring at times too. So if you really love the game, you enjoy that, and that's what I'm trying to instill not only in him but all my kids as well.
Yeah, that's where I fell in love with the game, is just those hours spent by myself in the middle, late night, sunsets, chipping around the green. Yeah. Those are the moments I definitely don't take for granted. And I think it's time to nerd out on some swing stuff here, Jason. Let's really go into the archives here and nerd out. So, all right, so you split up with Colin Swan. You had just an incredible run of over 20 years, and you hire Chris Como. And I think this is a fascinating discussion because for someone like me who's still on their swing journey of trying to make changes from, the swing that I won with on the PGA Tour with to where I want to get to, which is a much more functional swing to where I can play the game for as long as I want to, but also to where I just don't have to think about all of the things of trying to get everything in order. I feel like getting your body to move the right way and getting the face to match that, it's not easy. So tell me how difficult this journey has been, and how did it start, and where do you think all the progress that you made along the way where you're at now?
Wow. It is. It is a bit of a journey. Like I started getting injured I actually really started getting injured in 15 and 16. I was fighting through some pain there when I was number 1 in the world. But like my mindset was, I'll fight through it. Doesn't matter what it is. I'll just keep pushing because, will I get another opportunity at this? Maybe, maybe not. I'm just going to keep pushing through it because that's just like, that was the way that my mind worked. And then I realized that caught up to me pretty quick and doing some wrong training at the time. I was lifting some significant weight in the gym, doing a lot of powerlifting stuff. Went from supersetting stuff to like straight powerlifting stuff.
Holy crap. How much were you lifting? Like, do you remember?
I was deadlifting 410 and then squatting 365. And they were like, it was like sets of those. It wasn't like, hey, we're just doing one. We're doing sets of these, which is kind of crazy to think about. But
my God,
yeah, it was crazy. Like I remember doing sleds in a blizzard. Like it was like, and my buddy was training with me at the time because I was working at a place called Westside Barbell, which is like this powerlifting gym mecca. And I was I thoroughly enjoyed my time there. It was so much fun. But I got to a stage where I'm like, man, I'm a golfer, and I'm like, there's NFL guys walking through here. I'm like, I'm not a football player, man. I hit the ball. You know what I mean? But then I started getting injured soon thereafter, just from, wrong technique on, with my swing, and then losing mobility. Like I was very strong this way, and I couldn't. And when I started adding like twisting motions, I was quite weak. But it was soon thereafter, I fought like 2017 through 2022. So there was like a good 5 years of just like complete pain. I used to do 2.5 hours of putting every single day, pretty much through my career. And it got to a point where I couldn't do 15 minutes of putting. I'd have to stop.
And that kills you. That's...
Well, I mean, 100%. Then you start to practice faster, and when you practice faster, then you create bad tendencies, and then when you create bad tendencies, then you take your strength and turn it into a weakness. I started creating. I remember I went to see a buddy of mine, and he had a stand putt lab, and I was cutting across the ball 5 degrees on a putter. It was insane. It was insane. And then you're sitting there going, well, no wonder I can't control the bloody ball and the speed, because it's starting off left, and then the speed controls. I'm hitting the slices with my putts. So, but that's what happened was I started to race through my practice just so that I'm like, hey, I need to get these reps in. If I don't get these reps in, then I'm not going to be able to compete against these guys. And then I just started creating bad tendencies, and then it just got worse and worse and worse. And I just despised going out to practice because it just hurt so much. And then it got to a point where it'd take me like 10 minutes to get up out of bed. I had to roll out of bed. And then when my back did go out, I was crawling to the toilet, Oh
my God.
I wouldn't be able to go to the toilet. It was literally, I had help, people helping me up and walking me around. And it was very difficult. And then I just said, you know what, this is enough. I can't handle it anymore. I'm either going to have to get surgery at some point, and I've had small procedures done, or I'm going to have to make some change. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to make some change, because making change in your life is very difficult, especially in the second half of your career. So that's when I stopped working with Cole at the end of 2017. Then I went for a couple of years. And then after that, it was 2 or 3 years. And then I started working with Chris. And from there, I have a lot more knowledge about the golf swing now than I ever have. But there is a double-edged sword there too, because you sometimes get a little bit too technical. You can hit a bad shot and go, hey, why did that happen? It wasn't because of this. But sometimes you can just hit a bad shot. You know what I mean? So it's just. Yeah,
it's rewiring your brain, Jason, right? Like you play the game at the highest level a certain way for your entire golf career, and all of a sudden now you're changing your body pattern, the windows in which you see shots. But most importantly, the hardest thing that nobody talks about is why guys are so good is because they know what their misses are, and they know how to make adjustments on the golf course. That to me are when guys like Tiger go and change swing coaches and make all these adjustments and are able to still be the best in the world. For somebody who's gone through it, I'm like, how? How did you do it?
Tiger's a very interesting one, because at the start of his career, all the way through probably to Sean Foley. Sean Foley is probably when he started changing his release pattern. I don't feel like he changed his release pattern too dramatically through the Butch years and the Haney years, and then obviously once he started working with Foley, I think that's when he kind of just started changing his release pattern a little bit.
We're at a point in time coming off of a wild Saturday of college football. People are consistently peeking over at this board.
He actually would not be my number one overall pick, nor would I bet him to be the number one overall pick. I think you got that next wave of NFL players, which is so enticing, which when you see Jaden Daniels come into the NFL and you go, I can get something like that with a guy with just as good an arm.
Pro Football Today. only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're gonna go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's gonna help me get the job done. There is not gonna be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Hitting like these big spinning, flary looking things. And I'm like, what in the world is going on? Then you go back and you're hitting it low and it's coming out with no spin. And then I always come back to ball flight. I literally always come back.
That's so cool.
I always come back to ball flight. It's just, it never lies, regardless of what happens. Like you'll sit there and you go, okay, that ball flight is good. That spin is good. If I'm hitting, and I always come back to my off-speed shots. Because I struggled with spin control. I would hit, let's say for instance, I got a 52 degree and I hit my 52 about 130 yards, and I'm trying to hit a 9 o'clock shot, which is 110 yards, right? And I'm hitting a shot into relatively firm greens, and they're landing and spinning back, and there's no control whatsoever. I'm handcuffed. You know what I mean? Yeah. I'm sitting there going, I cannot get this shot, even if there's a tuck pin back in the back. I can't get this shot close because it's a 9 o'clock swing and it's spinning back 5-7 paces. I'm like, I'm not going to get it close. Whereas when you used to finally go, I understand. It's like, I'm starting to feel like I'm hitting more up on it, even though I'm not. But like it's creating that certain flight that I'm looking for. It's creating the one bounce stop. Yeah, they're the shots that I look at. I'm like, now my swing's in the right spot.
And your visualization is something that I'll always remember from when you were playing your best, and being able to just, stand there for, it felt like hours, but really it was just, you just trying to get the image in your head of this is the shot, this is the ball flight. I imagine that's what you're trying to picture. Are you still going through that similar type of process? And are you trying to just picture ball flight? Or are you trying to not think about swing while you're thinking about ball flight?
So when I ask you a question like, what does your draw 7 iron look like?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden you start to think, okay, the draw 7 iron looks like this. So when you ask a question, your brain has to answer. So essentially what I do is I ask myself a question, like, what does that look like? And then from there, I go in, what does the draw 7 iron look like? I visualize the shot, and then I'm trying to feel that shot of what it feels like, what it looks like. And then I go in there and try and create that, because it's like you're trying to create the sensations through your body and go from there.
God, that's beautiful. All right, let's have a laugh on the way out. This is the last question I got for you, Jason, is the 2014 WGC match play when you played Victor Dubuisson.
Yeah.
I still laugh about the wild things that happened in those last couple holes for it to go to extra holes. Do you think about that event and the one that almost went away, right? Like it was insane.
Dude, all the time. I'm like, this Frenchman won't go away. I'm like, because I was like, in my mind, I'm like, I'm gonna push as hard as I can, and we're in the first playoff hole, and he hits it in the back over into a cactus, and I'm like watching this. I'm like, this is great. All I have to do is hit the green. I missed the green short and left, and then it literally he gets up there and it takes maybe 15 seconds, and he's in there and he just hits it without even thinking about it. And then he's like hitting the wire, the TV wire and everything. It's coming out, bobbling out, going through the rough. He hits it down to like 6 feet or something like that. And then I'm like, I hit my bunker shot to 10 feet. I'm like, holy crap, I've got to hold this, because if I don't hold it, he's beat me out of a cactus. And then I end up holding it. He holds it, and then he does the exact same thing the next hole. He hooks his second shot left into a cactus, somehow gets a drop, I guess, and then he hits a shot up and over, and then I'm just like sitting there laughing. I'm like, what do I got to do to beat this guy? You know what I mean? It's just unreal. But as the playoff went, I ultimately ended up beating him. But I just felt like everything was against me. You know, when I first opened it with those 2 playoff holes, I'm like, what do I have to do to beat this freaking guy, man? You know?
Oh, man, that was one of the best TV golf matches that we've had in a very long time. And I still look back at those highlights and think to myself, man, Jason almost didn't win that tournament. And Victor Dubuisson almost won it. For somebody that is in TV now, that was chef's kiss. It was so good. And Jason, thank you again, man. This has been a great conversation. And I think a lot of people that are either junior golfers, amateur golfers, people that are trying to make changes in their game, I think will have learned a lot from this. I know I have learned a lot from this just in my own personal golf journey, which who knows what that looks like. But it's sure, Jason, you've been somebody I've looked up to, and this has been a lot of fun. And I appreciate you coming on, man.
No worries, man. I love talking about golf. I love talking about techniques. So if you want me back on, I'd love to do that too. So thanks again, man. I appreciate it.